Jared Kushner is the son-in-law for Donald Trump. He married Ivanka Trump, bless his heart. And he was recently in a meeting, was supposed to be off the record, boy, it's now all over the record because we know what happened in there, with business leaders in Manhattan, and he made a startling admission about how they manipulated the media. And one company in particular, Sinclair. So let me go to Politico to explain this story. They broke it. Donald Trump's campaign struck a deal with Sinclair Broadcast Group during the campaign to try and secure better media coverage, his son-in-law Jared Kushner told business executives Friday in Manhattan. Now, Sinclair Broadcasting has a lot of local television stations. Now, when you're running an election and you need coverage in states like Ohio, well, that is super important because they own a lot of those stations, so they can put whatever they want on it. So let's find out what kind of deal they made. Kushner said the agreement with Sinclair, which owns television stations across the country in many swing states and often packages news for their affiliates to run, gave them more access to Trump and the campaign, according to 6 people who heard his remarks. In exchange, Sinclair would broadcast their Trump interviews across the country without commentary, Kushner said. So you understand the deal here? So Trump gets to do these interviews and doesn't get challenged. So it's basically a giant ad for him. And they run it in all these swing states across the country in all the stations that they own. That is a huge amount of free media. Now, in return, Sinclair gets more access to Mr. Trump. Does that sound like journalism to you? All right, let's have Sinclair executives explain it to us. Our promise was to give all candidates an opportunity to voice their position and with our viewers. Certainly, we presented an opportunity so that Mr. Trump could clearly state his position on key issues, Livingston said. Scott Livingston, he's the VP of news for Sinclair. He said, our commitment to our viewers is to go beyond podium, beyond the rhetoric. We're all about tracking the truth and telling the truth, and that's typically missing in most political coverage. But wait a minute. Scott Livingston, you apparently promised to do the exact opposite. Mr. Trump, and those are not my words, their words, Mr. Trump, we will air your interviews and then we won't make any comments on them. You could lie all you want, doesn't matter, we're not going to fact check you. We promised you that we won't fact check you. You can say whatever you want and we promise we'll zip it. We'll go to www.sh.com, which we also own. And so that's their idea of giving people the truth or journalism. To just go, okay, Trump, go, say whatever you want. I mean, that is better than an ad because it looks real. It looks like it's a real interview, but with no challenge. And it's much longer than an ad, and it costs Trump nothing. Amazing. And now let me go back to graphic 31 here because as Kushner explains, it actually gives them much better reach than going on cable news. Everybody's obsessed with cable news, but he's right. In this case, the local TV stations have more of an impact, especially in the places that they need. Kushner highlighted that Sinclair, in states like Ohio, reaches a much wider audience, around 250,000 listeners, than networks like CNN, which reach somewhere around 30,000. Do you get why? In the whole country, CNN is seen everywhere. In that local station in Ohio, of course, you only see it in that local area of Ohio. But they own so many of those local TV stations, and not that many people watch cable news to begin with. And so in Ohio, not that many people watch CNN, but they watch all those local TV stations and you add them up and you get much better reach than CNN. So I'm not saying that it wasn't a savvy decision by the Trump campaign. It was. Whether Sinclair should have gone along with that is a whole different story, but we'll get to their agenda in a second. Trump's spokesman said the deal included the interviews running across every affiliate, but that no money was exchanged between the network and the campaign. Well, that's even worse, right? At least when they pay him and they run ads, you've got a little bit of transparency. I can tell that's a cheesy political ad. Here, the interviews, in my opinion, are the ads themselves, and they're disguised as reporting. It's a disaster. Okay, Scott Livingston, again, the senior vice president of news at Sinclair, comes back and says, it was a standard package, but an extended package. It's an extended story where you'd hear more directly from candidate on the issue instead of hearing all the spin and all the rhetoric. In other words, we just let the candidate speak and did not challenge him at all. Thank you for that admission. Now, they claim that they offered it up to Hillary Clinton too. She just didn't take it. By the way, that doesn't make it any better. If you say I'm selling out to both parties and I'm pretending to do journalism, but I'm basically giving them free ads and behind the scenes promising them that I won't challenge it or talk about it afterwards if they misstate anything, lie about anything, or give any analysis or perspective, well, that isn't journalism at all. That's just a business transaction, except you're calling it news. It's horribly deceptive. It's exactly what's wrong with the mainstream media and how they're in cahoots with Washington. And saying I do it for both parties doesn't make it better. And by the way, they didn't. They only did it for Trump. Okay, that's what happened in reality, no matter what they say they offered to Clinton. Okay, local stations in the past have been directed by Sinclair to air must-run stories produced by Sinclair's Washington bureau that were generally critical of Obama administration and offered perspectives primarily from conservative think tanks, the Washington Post reported in 2014. Sinclair is conservative. Now, that's why they mandate that their local news stations run anti-Obama pieces. It's not, hey, local news, you figure it out. If you think that Obamacare makes sense, you say it does, or you give them the details about it. You don't even have to give commentary on it. Or if you think it doesn't make sense, say that, no problem. No. You don't get to have perspective or analysis. It is forced upon you, and it must be conservative. What happened in the liberal media? I thought we had liberal media. Hey, wakey. These companies are worth a gigantic amount of money. Almost all of the mainstream media companies are worth billions of dollars. They don't want to rock the boat. They love the status quo. They want tax cuts. They want the political corruption because that goes at the end product becomes TV ads, which makes their TV stations, their local TV stations, much more valuable. They love the corruption. They love conservative ideology, which is lower taxes on them and less regulation of them. So you think that they're liberal? That's a joke. They're enormously conservative. And this is just one example of that. Now, at the end here, I want to give a little shout out to CNN. Not something we do often, but credit where credit is due. So apparently, Kushner said they also tried to strike a deal with CNN. They said they didn't like the composition of their panels. So trying to dictate to them, hey, who do you put on the panel and who do you take off? And Kushner added that he personally talked with Jeff Zucker, who runs the CNN, about changing the composition of the panels, but Zucker refused. Now, I think I had a huge bone to pick with how CNN ran their coverage during this election season in the primaries and in the general election, but credit to them for at least not kowtowing to this level of demands by one of the politicians for access. Later, after the election, Zucker and others at CNN went to go meet with Donald Trump to ask him how they should do coverage. But again, to this point, we don't know if they changed it or not. And here we actually have a detail where you got to give them credit for doing the right thing. And by the way, the important part of that is then what are the consequences? Politico explains the campaign then decided not to work as closely with CNN, and Trump ramped up his bashing of the cable network. Finding out what happens behind the scenes is very important because it affects what you see. So it affects it on both sides. If you see something in the media and you think, oh, that must be their actual opinion or perspective or analysis, sometimes that's the case, but for a lot of these companies, not the case. No, they either got told to say that, they got bought to say that, or there was a deal behind the scenes, and that's why you saw what you saw, and that's why people can't stand the mainstream media anymore. That's why they don't trust them. In fact, the media is the only thing less trusted than politicians right now. And on the politician side, they also make those deals. And if you don't play ball, you don't get TV, you don't get any of the ad deals, you don't get any access. For example, TYT, we've got a giant millennial audience. We didn't play ball to either side, and voila, there are no ads. There's no money that comes in. And that's how they, in their minds, punish you. Now, one of them lost that battle, so she wound up punishing herself. And then for the guys who do play ball, they get access, they get more ads, and the candidate gets better coverage that he basically bought or negotiated for. Now, I thought Donald Trump was Mr. Authentic and Honest, according to his supporters. And so when he was speaking out against CNN, it's because he thought they were doing unfair coverage. No, it turns out he wanted to manipulate them. But since they wouldn't be as corrupt as some of the other members of the media, that's why he turned around and said, oh, goddamn CNN, can you believe it? In reality, this is the one time you should give CNN credit for not giving in to the ransom demands of Donald Trump, who practices corruption for a living. That's what we warned you about. Now, his son-in-law is basically bragging about it. Be forewarned. You've got 4 years of this coming up. He did all this without that much power. Now that he's going to be president, Imagine how much he's going to push the media around. The Young Turks isn't just us, it's also you guys. You make this show possible, and we want to thank you for it, and we want to grow together. We want to be too strong. tytnetwork.com/join. Let's do it.